Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Arab Ministerial Forum on the future of social protection in the Arab region is taking place at a time when the world is thinking of dealing with COVID-19 and now with the emergence of a new uh, variant of COVID-19, Omicron, especially in light of the need to increase resilience and funding and all the other issues that come and that arose with COVID-19. Yes, the measures taken by the Arab countries in order to respond to COVID-19 on all levels were commended by all. However, this bitter experience, has unfortunately laid bare the incapacity of the social protection systems to cover a large number of people who are vulnerable, especially those who are working in the informal sectors and others marginalized categories. This is why this forum is even more important, as it helps coming up with recommendations that can bridge the existing gaps and provide the inclusiveness that is needed in coverage and protection. The regional the issue-based coalition on social protection in the Arab region and in collaboration with the IPC-IG and the socialprotection.org platform have allowed us today to continue the discussion on the priorities of social protection in the Arab region, which was already launched in the preparatory meeting on October 21, 2021. First of all, allow me to share some organizational and logistical points with you. First, I would like to remind the colleagues and the speakers in particular of the need to keep the microphone on mute and to unmute it only when they need to speak. Second, interpretation, simultaneous interpretation into Arabic, English, and French is available so that you can follow in your choice of language by clicking on the globe that you see at the bottom of your screen. And as you see on the slide in front of you, kindly write down any all your comments, all requests for technical assistance in the chat box, and one of our team members will be immediately in touch with you to help you. I would like to also remind you that this meeting will be recorded and later on uploaded on the official webpage of the forum so that those who could not attend may benefit from the discussions that took place. As for the agenda, and as you can see on the screen, following the opening session, we will have 4 parallel sessions, each covering one of the 4 topics: coverage and a response to shock, governance, and adequate and sustainable protection, social protection systems. And we will reconvene in plenary around 10 minutes past 5 p.m. Beirut time in a plenary session whereby we will hear about the outcomes from the different parallel sessions. And then we will move on to the closing session in which we will be sharing a declaration summarizing the outcomes of the parallel sessions as well. We begin now with the opening session, and I give the floor to Mr. Ted Chaiban, the Regional Director of UNICEF in the Middle East and North Africa, MENA SP-IBC Co-convener. The floor is yours, Mr. Ted Chaiban. Thank you. Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues from the United Nations, I would like to welcome you all in this Forum on the Future of Social Protection in the Arab Region, on behalf of UNICEF as a participating member in the IBC, SP, as well as ILO. We are gathered here today to come up with a vision for social protection in the Arab region in order to achieve political and economic recovery post COVID 19, in order to accelerate progress towards sustainable development goals, namely Objective 1.3 on social protection, Target 1.3 on social protection. This target is extremely important as economic shocks, the economic shock emanating from COVID 19 and the sharp drop in oil prices have resulted in extreme poverty in some cases. More than 10 million children became financially poor and monetarily poor, and it is expected to see more children uh, slide into multidimensional poverty in North Africa and the MENA region post COVID 19. The economic impact of COVID 19 became evident by mid 2020, and this is why governments in the region were quick to respond. Estimates indicate that the countries in the region applied more than 155 social protection measures, including emergency cash assistance and social protection, as well as job market measures. For example, in Jordan, the first cash payment was made within the first 10 days of announcing this program. And the increase in coverage was also very good. Morocco succeeded in protecting 65% of informal workers by July 2021. Many countries participating with us today exerted tremendous efforts to provide social protection. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, for the future, the biggest question that we must address is how can we benefit from those initiatives so that we make them regular and steady in order to avoid repeating the losses of the past and to reduce poverty and to reduce the multidimensional impact of COVID 19 on populations. As we need to put countries on the track, bring them back on the track of sustainable development. It is high time we benefited from social protection in better ways. It is high time we invested in national systems that will help families and children to start enjoying life better and to respond better to shocks and traumas. I would like to invite you all to participate in the discussions that will take place today to discuss the following issues. At a time when many populations around the world are still living without social protection, i.e., 4 out of 5 children in the region do not have social protection, which is lower than the global average. What are the measures that we need to take in order to achieve universal protection? This is something that requires a speed, swiftness, and boldness. Second, what are the steps that we need to undertake to increase investment in spending on social protection, knowing that the current spending is only 60.9% of the GDP in the region, which is much lower than the world average, which is 12.9%. How can we increase that spending and how can we make it more equitable? For example, should we consider slowly eliminating energy subsidies and using those funds and reallocating them to social protection, for instance? Third, how can we work in order to counter the division in the region and to increase integration between social protection systems and social services? And by that, we mean uh, prote- social security services to which the citizens contribute and other services as well. What are the good governance systems and coordination mechanisms that can help us overcome those traditional methods? How can we manage reforms and how can we transition from old systems to new systems, taking into account our target audiences? Five, and last, how can we make our systems more responsive in the face of external shocks in the region where people are living in vulnerable situations and in protracted crises? We have discussed several of these issues during our preparatory meeting on October 21. That meeting had brought together officials of the member states in the region. And in that meeting, we had um, reached a draft on how to achieve those goals, a draft paper on how to achieve those goals. I hope that we will be reaching a consensus on that declaration and those recommendations in this meeting. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to the discussions that will take place today during this first regional forum of its kind. Let us maximize the benefit from this meeting and let's step up our regional cooperation. In the issue-based coalition on social protection in the Arab region and the MENA region, IPC-SP, we will consolidate our efforts and step up our coordination with all partners, including donor countries and international financial institutions and other United Nations agencies. Finally, allow me to extend my heartfelt thanks to you for your participation in this meeting. I would like to also thank all the members of the IPC-SP for their valuable cooperation. I would like to thank ILO and ESCWA. Thanks are also due to the uh, IPC-IG. I would like to wish you a successful meeting. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I would like for his opening remarks. And I hope that what he brought up subjects will be further discussed during our sessions. I now give the floor to Ms. Ruba Jaradat, the Regional Director of ILO Arab States, and also MENA SP-IBC Co-convener. The floor is yours, Dr. Ruba. Thank you very much, Sabine. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of ILO, as co-convener, I would like to welcome you very warmly to this Arab Ministerial Forum on the future of social protection in the Arab region. The global report published by the ILO lately was coupled with a specific special report on the Arab region, which was launched today. This report shows that only 40% of the population in the MENA and Arab region have an effective coverage in at least one area of social protection areas. And this is less than the international or global average. The COVID-19 pandemic actually sounded the alarm all over the world, which sheds the light on the importance of social protection as a factor for economic security in times of crisis, and the need for us to transform this current crisis into an opportunity to undertake a comprehensive change. The Arab region spends only 6.2% of the GDP on social protection, which is less than the global average, which is 12.9%. The gaps in coverage are wide, especially for the vulnerable categories, whereby 40.5% above the retirement age receive pensions, and this is much less than the global average, which is estimated at 77%. The pandemic shed the light on many gaps in coverage, and this is due to the archaic social protection systems in the region. And also, the informal workers and the informal sectors had greater needs for social protection. And as we started working on supporting incomes and revenues in different areas of the Arab region, the countries used on a large scale social protection systems that are based on contribution or not based on contributions in order to alleviate the burden on the poorer categories of the people. Efforts were exerted to further develop the infrastructure in this regard, whether the IT infrastructure or otherwise. Today, we look forward to hearing your opinions about the lessons learned, and we look forward to receiving your views also on the new social protection systems that were created in these extraordinary times. And as you know, extraordinary times require sturdy and bold measures in order to come up with innovative solutions. So this is why the international call by the ILO during its conference in July 2021 uh, called for sustainable and universal social protection that is collectively funded, that can protect people's income and provide a basic social and healthcare. International standards, uh, of course, shed the light on or provides a framework to counter the new challenges in light of the joint principles based on participatory social dialogue. I am extremely happy today because the vision of the member states will be also met by the visions of the employers and workers organizations, as well as international organizations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the declaration on the future of social protection in the Arab region, which was put together by the member states in preparation for the meeting, is the foundation of the roadmap that we need to take into account. It also sheds the light on the importance of social protection measures, especially in times of emergency and crisis. And we need to make that the starting point to accelerate the reform and to lay the foundation for stronger national systems. And this paves the way for a stronger and sustainable social protection systems that are collectively funded. Last, I would like to specifically thank UNICEF and ESCWA, as well as the International Policy Center for um, and I would like to thank you for this cooperation in organizing this important meeting. I wish you a successful meeting and hope that your discussions here will be positive and will guide our work in a partnership to make sure that everyone receives social protection. Back to you, Sabine.
Thank you, Dr. Ruba. We move now to the recorded speech by Executive Secretary of ESCWA, Dr. Rola.
صاحبات وأصحاب المعالي والسعادة.
Excellencies,
إنه ليسعدني ويشرفني
it
أن
is a
أفتتح مع
pleasure and an
زملائي
honor
في
for
تحالف
me
الأمم
to
المتحدة
open with my
هذا الملتقى
colleagues
الوزاري
at the
الأول
UN
من
coalition
نوعه في
this
المنطقة.
first
ويأتي
ministerial
تنظيم هذا
conference
المنتدى
in
في
this
وقت
region.
أحوج ما تكون فيه
This
دولنا
conference
العربية
is taking
كما
place at
باقي
a time
الدول
when
إلى
our Arab
منظومة حماية
countries and the rest
اجتماعية
of the
شاملة
countries are in
وعادلة
dire need
لا
of
تهمل أحد
a
بل تساعد الشعوب
inclusive
على
and
الصمود
just
وتحمل الأزمات
social protection
والكوارث.
system that
وعلى
excludes
رأسها جائحة
nobody and helps everybody
كوفيد-19
face
التي لا
crisis and
تزال
disasters,
تعصف بالعالم
especially
منذ
with
سنتين.
COVID-19 pandemic that
فالحقيقة التي
is
ندركها جميعا
touching the world,
إن أنظمة
has
الحماية
been
الاجتماعية
touching the
في
world for
المنطقة
2 years.
العربية
The
وبالرغم من
social protection
اختلافها من
systems in the
دولة إلى
Arab
أخرى
region, although they
تواجه
differ from one country to
تحديات
another, are
قائمة
facing
قبل الجائحة
challenges
لا سيما
that
على مستوى
have
التغطية
existed before
والاستدامة
the
المالية
pandemic, especially
والتنسيق
at the level of
والاستجابة
coverage,
للصدمات.
financial
ومع
sustainability,
حلول الجائحة
coordination, and
تكشفت
shock
نقاط
response.
الضعف هذه
With
بشكل
the
أكبر
pandemic, those
وألقت
weaknesses
بثقلها
were
على كاهل
more
الحكومات
salient
التي
and
تحركت بسرعة وبأشكال
added to the
مبتكرة
burden of
في
the
كثير من
governments
الأحيان
that had to
لتوفر
react and
الحماية
respond in
للذين
a very
أثرت
creative way
الجائحة
sometimes in order
وتبعاتها
to
على
provide the
معيشتهم
protection for those
وأمنهم
who were affected by the
الاقتصادي
pandemic,
والاجتماعي لا
especially in
سيما
their social
أولئك
and
العاملين
economic security,
والعاملات في
especially those
القطاع
who
الغير
work
رسمي.
in the informal
وهنا
sector.
لا يسعنا إلا
And
الإشادة
here
بما قامت به معظم دول
we can
المنطقة
only praise
للاستجابة
what has
لتبعات
been made
الجائحة
by the countries
وبأساليب
of the
وطرق
region to
مبتكرة
face this
والتي
pandemic in
نعتبرها
a
فرصة
creative
ليس
and
فقط
innovative
للتعلم من
way.
التجارب
This is
بل
an opportunity
أساساً
not only to
يمكن
learn from
البناء
the
عليه
experiences, but
للمضي
also
قدما
to
نحو
be
نظم
a
حماية
basis
اجتماعية
for
أكثر
the
شمولاً وإنصافاً
social
وجاهزية
protection that is
للاستجابة
more
للصدمات واستدامة
inclusive and
المالية.
more ready to face
حضور الكريم،
this
عندنا في الأمم
challenge,
المتحدة
the challenge
نقف
of
على استعداد
financial
لدعم
sustainability. Ladies
دولكم
and gentlemen,
الموقرة
we are ready to support
ونتطلع إلى التعاون
your
المستمر
to
والوثيق
have the support
مع
of your
جامعة
countries,
الدول
and we are looking
العربية
forward for
حول
close
قضايا
cooperation with
الحماية
the League of Arab
الاجتماعية.
States around
ومن
issues of
هذا
social
المنطلق
protection.
نأمل
Here
أن
we
تأخذ
can
مخرجات
say
هذا
that we
المنتدى
hope that
حيزاً
the
في اجتماع مجلس وزراء الشؤون
outcomes of
الاجتماعية العرب
this
القادم
conference will
المنعقد في
be a
21
basis
23
for
كانون
the
الأول
conference
ديسمبر
that will be
في
held
مدينة
in
الرياض.
December in
كما
Riyadh.
أننا بدورنا
And we
سنسلط الضوء
also
على ما
will
سيصدر عن
shed a
هذا
light
المنتدى
on what
الموقر
will
خلال المنتدى
emanate from
العربي
this
للتنمية
conference
المستدامة
during the Arab Forum for
2022
Sustainable
المقرر
Development
عقده في
2022
الفترة من
that
15
is
إلى
to be held
17
between the
آذار
15th and the
مارس من
17th
العام
of
القادم.
March in next year.
صاحبات وأصحاب المعالي والسعادة،
Excellencies,
أشكركم مجددا
ladies and
باسم تحالف
gentlemen,
الأمم
I
المتحدة
reiterate my thanks on
القائم
behalf
على
of the
مسائل
United Nations
معينة
Coalition that
حول
is
الحماية
based on
الاجتماعية على
specific issues
مشاركتكم
around
اليوم
social
في
protection, for
أعمال
your
هذا المنتدى،
participation today in
وأمل
the works
أن
of
تثمر
this conference. And I
مناقشاتكم
hope that
بالتوافق
your
حول مبادئ وأسس
discussions
من
will lead
شأنها
to
الدفع قدما
convergence and
لنظم
consensus
الحماية
on principles
الاجتماعية
and
في
basis in
منطقتنا
order to move
العربية،
forward
وإلى
with the
ملتقى
social
قادم
protection
يجمعنا
systems in
وجها
our
لوجه
country.
في القريب
And we
العاجل
hope
إن شاء
that
الله.
we will be meeting in person, face to face soon, hopefully. Thank you. We thank Dr. Dashti for her message message to this conference, and we hope that we will be able next time to meet not virtually, but in person. We move now to listen to the main speaker of this conference, Dr. Omar Razzaz, former Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Jordan. Thank you, Your Excellency. The floor is yours. Thank you, Sabine. He's asking whether it is clear. The sound is clear. Sabine is answering, yes, the sound is very clear. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues from the United Nations, ESCWA, UNICEF, and the International Labour Organization, we are meeting today, and what is really a concern for the world is this new variant of COVID-19 pandemic, Omicron. Omicron, we have learned it very hard, and we've been talking about it for 2 days or 3 days now. We've been suffering from this pandemic for 2 years. We have discovered some strengths with the Arab citizen in our system, but also we discovered some big weaknesses also. Maybe the main gap that exists at the global level is the absence of a coordinated action to face this pandemic. We saw big countries monopolizing the vaccine, considering that they can really immunize themselves and their population in a very egoistic and selfish way. By protecting themselves, their citizens, and their borders. 2 years later, we discovered that this is useless and vain. Even if there is one small country where there is no vaccine, this country will be the source of mutation for this virus. And this virus will move gradually or suddenly to the rest of the countries. So we are on the same boat. We are on the same boat, believe me. And if this is not really reflected on our institutional work and action and coordination, we will never succeed, neither in facing COVID-19, nor in facing other pandemics or viruses. And maybe equally important are the repercussions and consequences of climate change, including all the storms, droughts, fires, wildfires, increase of sea levels, etc., with all the economic and social impact. We are now in a situation that is new and that requires a high-level coordination, and not only coordination, but a real management of these issues with wisdom by all. So the issue of pandemics, climate change, and also, if we remember 3 years ago, we were talking about something different that is now absent. It is a fourth industrial revolution and how it will impact the labor markets, how it will impact the youth, and the need to have new jobs created. All these things, we are facing them on a daily basis. Therefore, the issue of social protection, the flexibility in dealing and with the issues, and also as quickly as possible. Now, these issues are no longer are now an emergency. Now we move to our experiences of the Arab countries in this field, and what we achieved and what we did not achieve. And here lies the importance of the dialogue of today. In the region, the countries of the region have achieved in a varied way, of course, because there are big differences in terms of income, etc., and revenues. So during the last decade, much has been done indeed in most of the Arab countries. The experience of Jordan is one of success stories. Maybe this is not the best, but it is one of the best. So now I am really honored to start my work in 2007 in social affairs in Jordan, and I was really aware of the actuarial aspect of this issue. But by looking at the different impact at the social, and even economic and even political levels was very important. So I reviewed all the literature, and I started with Bismarck even, as you know, dating back to 1889 when he announced the first social security program for pension, death, and disability. And the conservatives told him that he was moving towards socialism and the left, while the latter considered him as stealing the work of the socialist action. And his answer was very clear. He doesn't care about either one. He is aware, he's concerned with social protection. And the issue of social and economic stability is very important. In Jordan, we have reviewed what has been achieved and all the main allowances, insurances, pension, death, and disability. But we were aware of the fact that the pension salary is not linked to the real economic situation, and it loses its value in within 20 years. So we started by expanding also the scope of coverage. The SMEs weren't covered at that time, and we added many features. We introduced maternity coverage because maternity was covered by the employer, and this led to discrimination from the part of the employer between male and female workers. So we added this in collaboration with the ILO, in collaboration with the United Nations. We added a maternity insurance, which led to more equality for gender equality in order to avoid this kind of discrimination. And this had an important impact on achieving equity in the labor market. The other point was the insurance on unemployment insurance, which was really important, especially during the pandemic period. Indeed, much was covered. I mean, the scope of coverage was expanded, and it covered also daily workers and other kinds of workers. During the pandemic, the number of enterprises covered moved to 105,000 instead of around 70,000. So we responded quickly, and we expanded the scope of coverage. And we have also the social assistance fund that played an important role. It reached 500,000 members, subscribers, with in-kind as well as food allowances. And it exceeded somehow the scope of work and scope of action. And now it is no longer related to poverty, limited to poverty, but also it is covering now a wider scope. We are still working on facing a real challenge, which is the health coverage. The Minister of Health is really working on this seriously. Now, 1/4 to 1/3 of the Jordanian citizens are not covered by any insurance, health insurance system. As Dr. Ruba mentioned, yes, there were quantum leaps, but varied between countries. But if we compare our countries to countries of the world in terms of income per capita of the GDP, we find that we are still facing difficulties, and we need to develop further, whether in terms of coverage or expansion of the inclusion of these systems. The report you have in your hands is rich with figures and comparisons between Arab countries, and this is very clear. It is clear that the road, the way is still long before us, and there are still real gaps in terms of coverage. So now, in brief, our main challenges that are in front of us are still the expansion of coverage, especially for informal and non-formal sectors, the daily workers, etc., or the self-employed. The expansion of coverage inclusion, the risks covered also. And we need to check also that there is a complementarity and integrity between the social insurances and allowances and the social protection that is financed by the budget. So this coordination and integration are very important, and also the role of the private sector is very important, as well as the role of the civil society organizations. During the pandemic, there were many initiatives and real partnerships that appeared, and it was very important to have this kind of coordination between these different parties. This first dimension, the coverage and the expansion of inclusion. The second point is about legislations and the review of some legislations so that we can really respond to the new developments and overcome the crisis we are facing. So we need some flexibility in these legislations now, but also, and here we come to the third point, we need a high level of governance, transparency, and the capacity by the citizen, as well as the enterprises, institutions, and the trade unions to render those organizations and enterprises accountable for this role. So these funds are either funds coming from the people, the citizens who paid subscriptions through their salaries, etc. So they have the right to have access to this service, or they come from the budget, from budget allowances in the case of social assistance fund. And therefore, they come from local income and revenues, and therefore the citizen has to check what are the criteria used. And here it is very important to rely on a wide range of, on a wide database and have a clear criteria about who and when, who receives the support and when, so that we can increase the trust of the citizen in those services. The fourth important point is how we can have access to sustainable financing. Maybe this is the point that is very important, and excellencies in the ministries of labor and social development, they always find that there is a kind of limitation in the terms of capacity of financing. And here I can conclude with a quotation from the Hadith, who feels safe in his body and has a good health. He is as if he owns the whole world. Yes, the feeling of this feeling is important. We know that this is very costly, and it is wrong to look at these costs as something, a burden. They are an investment in the citizen, in the Arab citizen, in his dignity, in his belonging to his nation. This package of allowances and gives him a protection, the feeling of protection and safety and justice. And this is what makes him really a good citizen. Yes, the feeling of the citizen is safety in his own home, in his country. This is what we're talking about today specifically. And we are looking forward for a rich this dialogue that leads to principles and important commitments from the part of our Arab countries that are in line of international standards and international tools and instruments that have been signed by our countries. And this should be reflected mainly and more importantly on the aspirations of our countries. Thank you, and may the peace of God be bestowed upon you. Thank you. I would like to say that we miss you in Beirut, and we thank you for this sharing with us of your experience and concerning the obsessions and the concerns that we hope that we will be discussing in the next panels. Anyway, we will have a summary of the declaration of principles that is supposed to be adopted today. It will be presented by Mr. Fabio Veras, coordinator of IPC-IG programs. Mr. Veras, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sabine. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, and UN representatives, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to present to you the meeting declaration of today's forum on the future of social protection in the Arab region, building a vision for the post-COVID-19 reality. The declaration is based on countries' statements at the technical meeting held on October 21st and was subsequently shared with all participants for comments. We are grateful to everyone who has provided comments and suggestions to this final draft version, and we kindly request colleagues who still have comments to please share them during the open session in the parallel sessions. During the open discussions in the parallel session, sorry. The technical team of the conference will do their best to reflect them into the final version. I will not read the declaration, but I will try to summarize its main parts. The declaration, first of all, acknowledges the commitments enshrined in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, especially regarding Target 1.3, which calls upon countries to implement nationally appropriate social protection systems and measures for all and achieve substantial coverage of the poor and the vulnerable. The declaration further makes reference to several international and regional human rights frameworks that establish the right to social protection. It also acknowledged that Arab governments have put in place considerable response and policy innovations in the social protection response to the COVID-19 pandemic, despite the usually gaps in coverage. It then reaffirms the importance of continuing to strengthening social protection systems for achieving social justice, human development, and inclusive growth. In its main part, the declaration outlined 4 axes of reforms and related principles for future of social protection in the Arab region, in line with national priorities and capacities and the principle of a progressive realization of commitments to international agreements. These 4 axes are in line with the topics of the forum, namely coverage, shock responsiveness, financing, and governance. Regarding coverage, the declaration includes the following principles. Firstly, progressively achieving universal social protection, thereby ensuring no one is left behind by promoting rights and life cycle-based social protection flows with its principles of no discrimination and equality. Secondly, reviewing efforts to extend social protection to especially vulnerable groups, such as children, older persons, persons with disability, women, workers in the formal and the rural economy, migrant workers, refugees, and people on the move. Thirdly, ensuring access to adequate social protection for workers in all types of employment, formal and informal, and making social protection an enabler of national formalization strategy. Fourthly, accelerating efforts to improve financial social protection when accessing health, education, and other basic social services. Fifthly, ensuring social protection benefits are adequate, fostering a dignified life for the recipients. Regarding shock responsiveness and enhancing the resilience of social protection systems for future shocks, the countries agreed to work on the following. First, investing in strong regular social protection systems to provide a strong basis for system shock responsiveness. Second, enhancing the preparedness of national social protection systems, including identification, broad-based registration, and payment mechanisms to react quickly and adequately in times of crisis. Third, recognizing and fulfilling the joint responsibility between national and humanitarian social protection actors to improve alignment and integration. On the third axis, improved financing, it is aimed to, first, progressively expand social protection finance base to fill coverage and adequacy gaps. Second, promote universal and mandatory social protection approach through a combination of contributory and government finance schemes that ensure fairness and solidarity. Third, utilize progressive tax and contribution-based finance mechanisms to expand social protection financing, together with efforts to reprioritize and rationalize public spending, as well as better leveraging alternative means of financing, including zakat and other sources. Fourth, when needed, work together with relevant partners to complement domestic financing sources with international and humanitarian financing. Finally, for better governance and coordination, the countries will aim to, first, strengthen legal and policy frameworks that guarantee comprehensive and adequate social protection across the life cycle. Secondly, improve national social protection coordination arrangements and promoting integrated social protection response. Third, strengthen data collection, integrated information, inspection, monitoring, and evaluation, as well as grievances and complaints management systems to ensure that those in need are identified, reached, and provided with social protection and high quality service. Fourth and last, ensure through social dialogue, participation of citizens, workers, employers, and beneficiaries in the good governance of social protection systems and enhancing the engagement and empowerment of government, civil society, religious institutions, and international actors in an accountable, participatory, transparent, and nationally owned policy development process. I would like to thank you all for your attention and contribution and participation in today's forum, and look forward to hearing your country's vision for social protection. Thank you very much.